Hey, what's going on, everybody? In this video, we're going to be doing a book review on classical history, and it's going to be The First Clash by Jim Lacey, and the subtitle is The Miraculous Greek Victory at Marathon and Its Impact on Western Civilization. So essentially, it's a book on Marathon, and if you guys don't know already, I love Greek and Roman history, as you can probably see. This was a reread that I did in March, and I'm just now getting around to doing a video review of it. But yeah, let's get started with the things I didn't like usual. Alright, first of all, this is probably the biggest thing. I don't mind setting up the context for what your book is about in a history book. You know, it's actually good to have a good foundation of the setting and the context of whatever you're talking about. However, in a 200-ish page book, I don't want 100 pages of context, to be honest. Seriously. I think the Ionian Revolt, which is the first clash between the Ionian Greeks in what is Turkey, with the Persian satrap, that's around page 90 or 100 or something. And so before that, it's literally just a history of all of Persian history, and then all of Athenian history before that. I mean, obviously it's briefly condensed, but he goes way back. For example, the Persians, he starts with the legends of Cyrus and everything, establishing the Achaemenid Empire. And it's just a little too much setting, to be honest, for the Battle of Marathon. And I can understand a little bit for Persia and the city-state of Athens. They need at least some context. But for example, he has a whole chapter or two on the whole back history of Sparta for the Battle of Marathon, and it's kind of weird, to be honest. Yes, the Spartans technically were on march to aid the Athenians before the Battle of Marathon, but they didn't participate in they got there the day after the battle. So it's just kind of strange having a whole back history of Sparta, and Sparta doesn't actually do anything in the battle that this book is about. So like I said, just way too much context. Just like this, I probably spent way too much time just talking about how there was too much context. It's the same thing. He also has some claims in the book which seem kind of strange to me. For example, let's see, on page 132, he asserts the Assyrians were the first to organize regiments by arms. And while obviously the Assyrians did do that, I'm pretty sure the Hittites and the Egyptians and the Babylonians also did that. And when I'm talking about the Babylonians, I mean the earlier Babylonians, something like the Neo-Babylonians. So yeah, I mean, that was kind of a questionable claim. Also, there's a bunch of debates surrounding many aspects of the Battle of Marathon, and he actually has quite a few unorthodox stances. And actually, I'm really pleased that he brought them all up and basically put his views forward and did defend them. I don't agree with all of them, and we're going to get to one in just a second, but I am pleased that he did do that, because a lot of scholars kind of avoid, stuff like that, basically any kind of controversy or whatever. But yeah, he has several unorthodox stances, and he did convert me on one of them, on one major one. But anyways, the one I'm going to disagree completely with is his theory that at the Battle of Marathon, where the Athenians came down from their camp to initiate the battle, against the Persian camp, he basically believes in the Herodotus's basically statement that they charged downhill for however many, basically a mile's worth, or so just under a mile, I think is what it equates to, and that's just ridiculous, to be honest. I don't understand. I mean, the hoplite panoply, their armor and shield and everything, was 50, 60, 70 pounds. Plus the hoplite shield, I mean, imagine running with a 3.5 foot diameter shield on your strap to your arm. I mean, it makes no sense. I don't, because his argument was, well, this one study disproved it, but they were just PE majors in college or something, so they obviously weren't fit enough to do it. Whereas he knows people, and he used to run with a rucksack that weighed the same up and down stadium stairs and everything. But yeah, it's a lot more. I think it's a bit more complicated than that. The Athenian army, for the phalanx to work, you obviously have to stay in formation. It's not fighting hero style per se, one-on-one. So imagine 10,000 hoplites all running together in formation, wearing their armor and trying to stay, keep each other's shields overlapping. that for a mile sprint. That's not gonna happen. That's just crazy. And one last thing is he basically has statements where he tries to put like the Athenians on an even greater pedestal than they already have from winning the Battle of Marathon. And it's just kind of weird because they already have all that like credit and glory. They don't need you to kind of like make kind of fake-ish statements to like keep propping them up further. For example, in one of the footnotes, he basically says that yeah, technically the Spartans were the only ones that actually had a professional standing army that like actually trained. Every other city-state basically just sort of had a levy that's drawn up when they go to war, and the Athenians were no different. But he basically says the Athenians fought so many battles and wars in the like decade or two prior to the Battle of Marathon. They were essentially a nation under arms, and they were at least on par with the Spartan force. And I think that's kind of a bit of a stretch because the Athenians didn't like practice or train like on a regular basis, even though, like I said, they fought a bunch of battles and wars before that. I mean, there's even comments like right after like the Peloponnesian War, in which Athens literally would have been a nation under arms, where I think Xenophon is basically lamenting the fact that the Athenians like basically had like no training or practice, and he was like an Athenian general. So I doubt it doesn't make much sense on that point. So like I said, he has a lot of unorthodox arguments, and he does try to defend some of them, but he did convert me on a couple of them. And so let's go to the pros of the book. First of all, the argument that he did convert me on is at the Battle of Marathon. At this point in time, the Athenian army had a polemarch, which is kind of like the commander-in-chief, and then the 10 strategoi, or where the word strategy comes from, 10 generals basically. And supposedly they all had it was a, how do you want to call that? Every day it was a rotating command basically. Like each strategoi had, in one day they would be a general, then it'd go to the next general for the next day. So there'd still be technically one person in command on any given day. He does make some good arguments of how in the field an army like that would basically suffer horribly, and basically nothing would get done, and it would have been a mess. He believes the polemarch, which has usually been kind of identified more as an honorific position, I guess. He in at the Battle of Marathon, this person was Callimachus, and he probably was just the overall general of the whole Athenian host that went to meet the Persians. And yeah, he definitely converted me on that because his points really did make sense. I just sort of believe the whole rotating general theory just because the Athenian assembly did do some stupid stuff and had some just weird traditions, even if they weren't like practical. They did do some, voted on some dumb stuff. But anyways, that's for another day. So there was also several other things I think he did well. Like I said, he put a little bit too much context, but he does do a good job showing how the Persian rulers were not necessarily just despots and tyrants. They were actually pretty good administrators, to be honest, especially Cyrus and Darius. Darius is called like a shopkeeper and that sort of thing, basically, because he focused so much on like administrating the economy and things like that. So I've seen some books where basically anything that's Eastern or Persian, whatever, basically they're all just like the bad guys. Think 300. All the Persians are like psychos, and Xerxes is just like some like crazy psycho. I felt that he was pretty good on the Battle Marathon, but I think he was actually even better on the whole history of the Ionian Revolt, which is sort of the event that is the catalyst for the whole invasion of Greece by the Persians. He also has some really good chapters on comparing Athens with Persia, like the resources that each state had under their command, and like their different advantages and disadvantages that they could bring to the field of battle. Lastly, one of the things I think that the book definitely demonstrates is that Miltiades pretty much gets like all the credit for the victory at the Battle of Marathon. He was the strategoi that essentially gets all the credit in Herodotus for deciding on convincing all the other generals that they needed to attack even before the Spartans could get there, or instead of waiting, I guess, for the Spartans to get there. And he has good arguments why they did that as well. So he has puts good arguments forth why Miltiades is remembered and is claimed as like the hero of Marathon, whereas Callimachus, who probably actually was the actual commander, since he actually died in the battle, he really couldn't protect his like legacy since he was dead after the battle, and that's probably why Callimachus is pretty much forgotten and Miltiades is not. So yeah, but yeah, overall, I do appreciate the fact that he put all these arguments, even though I didn't agree with a lot of them. He did convert me on a couple things, and a lot of times it takes some bravery in history books for scholars to put forth things of that nature. And even though I thought some of them were kind of questionable, I'm definitely pleased that someone put those in writing. And for that, even though I didn't agree with a lot of the book, the overall narrative of through the Ionian Revolt through the Battle of Marathon was overall well done. And for that reason, I'm going to give The First Clash by Jim Lacey 3.5 out of 5 stars. And always remember, read victoriously.